Hey there, Math 8. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Math with Mullins. Today we're going to be looking at Lesson 3.4, Day 1, Solving Multi-Step Inequalities. That means not just one step, not just two, but probably 3 and up steps. So that is our main objective for today. It's very similar to solving multi-step equations, so if you felt confident with that, or even if you needed a refresher, this is a good lesson to watch. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing we want to remember is when we solve multi-step inequalities, it's the same way we're going to solve multi-step equations. So we're using the don't call me after midnight. We will see a little bit more of distribution and combining like terms today. We want to make sure that we're moving our variables to the same side and then adding and subtracting, multiplying or dividing. The thing we want to continue to watch out for are those negatives and your inequality symbols. Just because we know when we multiply or divide by a negative, we have to flip that inequality symbol. So we're just going to keep that in mind. If you don't already have this written in your notes, pause it here, write it down just as a good brain refresher. And when you're ready to go on, click play. All right, here are our first two examples. Remember, we're using don't call me after midnight. So let's start with distribute. The first one does look like we need to distribute the 2 to x and the negative 3. So that just means, again, 2 times x and 2 times negative 3. I know 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times negative 3 is negative 6, and then I just have greater than 2. I don't have to combine like terms, so now I'm just ready to move variables and make sure that my number's on the same side. I only have one variable, so I don't need to move anything else, so now I'm ready to just add that 6 to start us off. I'm going to get 2x is greater than 8. So that when I solve it next, I'm just dividing by 2, so x is greater than 4. Just a quick graph for these. I'm not going to go into detail about graphing here. If you needed to practice graphing, that's back from 3.1 and 3.2, maybe in a little bit of 3.3. That would be an open circle pointing to the right. So those would be your two answers. The next one, I don't have any distribution, but I do have something where I can combine. 2x and 7x makes 9x. So I'm going to write down what I have left. 9x plus 5 is less than or equal to negative 5. Now I'm ready to subtract 5 from both sides. I'm going to get 9x is less than or equal to negative 10. And then if you notice, after I start to divide this, I'm going to end up with a fraction. You can just say your answer is the fraction, negative 10 ninths, but some of you might have even typed that into your calculator, and that just means you did 10 divided by 9, and you got a repeating decimal. So you can even say this is negative 1.11 with the repetition bar on top. Okay? You do not have to graph that, but if you did, that would be a closed circle pointing to the left with negative 1.11 there at the bottom. Go ahead and take time to try this one. This one is a commonly missed one just because when you know that you're supposed to distribute this number here, but many people forget to distribute not just the 4, but a negative 4. So let's pause the video, see if you can try this one on your own, and when you're ready to check it, click play. All right, so like I said before, we're doing negative 4 times x and a negative 4 times a negative 1. If you notice that 1 has a minus sign in front of it. Negative 4 times x is a negative 4x, and negative 4 times negative 1 is actually a positive 4. I'm going to also bring down the 5 that was in the very beginning. It was not being distributed, so it did not change. And then I'm going to bring down the less than symbol and the 15. As I start to look for combining like terms, because that'd be my next step, I do see I have this 5 and this 4 that can go together. So now I'm going to have 9 minus 4x is less than 15. Now I'm ready to start solving. I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides. 15 minus 9 is going to give me 6. So I'm going to bring down everything else that was left over. And then I'm going to have to divide by negative 4. Okay? Because I'm dividing by a negative 4, I'm also going to have to flip my inequality symbol. So x is now greater than whatever 6 divided by 4 is, and that should be negative 1.5 or negative 1.5. If you wanted to graph this one, that would just be negative 1.5 with an open circle pointing to the right because you flipped your inequality sign. How did you do? Here's another one that we're going to try. Yes, we do see a fraction here being distributed, but distributing 1/2 to the number 8 and the negative 2x is actually not that bad. Go ahead and pause the video here, try this one on your own, and when you're ready to check it, click play. All right, so we're going to distribute first. 1/2 times 8. I'm going to show my work over here. That just means you're doing 1/2 times 8 over 1, which is 1 times 8 on the top, 8, and 2 times 1 on the bottom, which is 2. And 8 over 2 is 4. So 1/2 times 8 is 4. And then I'm also doing 1/2 times negative 2x. Okay, so that would be negative 2x on the top and 2 on the bottom, which is equal to negative 1x. So I'm going to write minus 1x. Still have that greater than or equal to symbol, still have the negative 2. Now I'm going to move my numbers together. I'm going to do that by subtracting 4 from both sides. Negative 2 minus 4 gives me negative 6 is greater than or equal to negative 1x. Notice that my next step is to divide by negative 1, and because I'm doing that, I must flip my inequality symbol and make it a less than or equal to sign. So now that I have 6 is less than or equal to a positive x, because negative 1 divided by negative 1 is just 1x, or I can rewrite this as x is greater than or equal to 6, so that when I graph it, I've got my 6 here in the middle, closed circle pointing to the right. Okay, how did we do on number 3? We got 1 or 2 more to look at, and then we'll be done with our lesson 3.4 day 1. So again, pause the video here, try both of these on your own, and when you're ready to check them, click play. All right, for this first one, being very cautious, we are distributing a negative 4 to the x and to the 2. Negative 4 times x is negative 4x, and negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. I'm going to bring down the x I had in front, the greater than symbol, and the 3. The next thing I need to do is combine like terms. And one thing that might be helpful is to make a 1 appear in front of this x. So now I see 1x minus 4x. I can combine those. That's going to give me negative 3x. Minus 8 still comes down, greater than, and a 3. Next, I'm going to move all my numbers to one side. That just means I'm going to add 8 to both sides. When I do that, I'm going to get 11 is greater than negative 3x. You should notice here that I am going to divide by a negative 3, which means I will need to flip my inequality symbol. 11 divided by 3 is going to give us a repeating decimal, so you could just keep it as negative 11 thirds, and then flipping that to be less than, and then an x. If you wanted to rewrite it, you could also say x is greater than negative 11 thirds, so that if you graphed it, it'd be an open circle pointing to the right. Okay, some of you might have even changed the improper fraction to a mixed number, and that would just be negative 3 2/3. You could also use that as well. Our last one, it doesn't look like we had to distribute anything, but I do see 2 things I can combine. Being very cautious here, I'm combining a 56 and a negative 16, or 56 minus 16. That is going to give me 40, and then plus 8x is less than 32. I'm going to subtract 40 from both sides. So 32 minus 40 is going to give me a negative 8. So I'm going to have 8x is less than negative 8. Dividing both sides by 8 will help me find my answer of x is less than negative 1. So again, if I graph it, that would be an open circle pointing left. Okay, that is going to conclude our lesson for 3.1 day 1. Tomorrow we'll see more questions though, but about word problems. So tune back in, like and subscribe if